computer. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Zavi D, once again, of Organic Health Movement, in my beautiful apartment. Feeling great, feeling good, but more so, excited to introduce my next guest. His name is Adam James, aka Adam Birch, aka formerly known as Mystic Man Witch, aka my dear friend. Adam is a singer-songwriter. He is a yoga teacher. He is a reiki practitioner. He is a light worker. He is a healer. He is an inspiration. And ultimately, one of my very, very good friends who I am totally, totally jazzed and honored to have on the podcast. Without further ado, Adam, welcome.
Thank you, my life brother. That was a fantastic intro. Thank you.
Oh, my honor. That was, I could have done it more justice, but I'm kind of just out.
No, we're in the same Justice League for sure.
That would be cool. A Justice League of like spiritual light warriors.
Yeah, spiritual Justice League warrior. No, that's what you said. Exactly. That would be a great title. It's something to work with.
We'll do it. Mystic Man Witch. There's a man gaslighting on 43rd and 2nd.
Let me pull out my poetry book. I've got some words of wisdom that'll calm the storm.
That you do. To begin on that note, you're a singer-songwriter, and I truly cherish your music. Talk to us a little bit about what your creative process is like, and then kind of where you started with your music career.
Oh man, my creative process. I think it's just about connecting with my body, connecting with nature, and getting into creating a space of openness, I think, and being a channel, receiving, being a receptor to a force, and a creative force. And for me, it comes together through different modalities of integrating my breath and my ideas and all of those things. So it's kind of that's a hard question to answer, but that's one way I approach things. But yeah, my music journey began when I was 9. I started playing music, taking guitar lessons, and it evolved from there. And yeah, that's part of it.
You mentioned open space and creating an open environment for you to be creative, to channel the creative force. My experience of most people nowadays is that they're so inundated with technology and constant stimulus, it's hard to find an open space to be creative. It's hard to find an open space to actually come up with something unique, something authentic, something cool.
Yeah.
Because mostly when we're inundated with other people's material, we get into a system of, or at least I do, kind of replicating and copying. So I like that you're saying that open space is vital for your creativity.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point too. The replicating and copying, that's actually part of a process too, to being able to identify with somebody else's piece of work that means something to you. So, just my inspirations and the things that I look up to, and the things and the types of sounds that I want to emulate, like that's pattern, recognizing those patterns and taking from that, but also adding to that. So I think thanks for bringing that up. I think that's a good point. How I connect with that process. Process of being creative is connecting with your heroes, connecting with like things that mean something to you, and music that means something to you and that makes you move and moves you.
To juxtapose my past point, it's also impossible to create something without what others have created, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
I like that you refer to what your heroes have moved you to do and what moves you to create. That's cool. What are the underlying motivations of your music and your work?
Feelings of, wanting to see something different in the world and wanting to feel a different way and not wanting to see so much suffering and wanting to transmute the suffering inside myself and the suffering that I see in other people. And, it's a form of transmutation and a form of um, taking control of your own life in a way and your own sound and, moving that forward in a positive direction.
Moving it forward to you, based on what I'm hearing you say, is kind of like taking your own amalgamation of all these different creative inputs, weaving it into your own, and then bringing it to the world, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Great reiteration. Thank you.
Now, when you amalgamate, what are some things that you look for in the music that you listen to, or the different creative sources that you've been inspired by, that give you that inspiration, that motivation to push the ball a little bit further? And typically, how does that manifest in terms of like what is a theme? What is like an underlying, almost like a common denominator between all those different creative inputs that gives you that inspiration to keep pushing the ball?
Wow, great question. Amalgamate. I love that word. I think almost people that I look up to are like Jeff Buckley. He's one of my favorite musicians of all time. Like I love Patty Griffin. I think I don't even know how to answer that question. Just feeling someone else's soul on, like, through their music and how it affects you is I don't know. It's like you kind of absorb yourself into their art and it absorbs into you, and there's like this overflow, and then like you adding on to that is really what creativity is. Just adding on to what somebody else has done and how they've made you feel and how they've moved you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Specifically though, like when you think of like Jeff Buckley, or you think of somebody in that realm, what is it about their art that really like intrigues you? What is it that really draws you
in? I think it's their rawness, like their ability to almost touch other realms of existence and other realms of feeling and depths of understanding.
Yeah, I know what you mean when it comes to people that I looked up to in the spiritual world, in the health and wellness world. There seems to be some truth that they're tapping into that resonates at a deeper level than just the level of information.
Right.
It seems to me to be a deeper esoteric, I won't say doctrine, but like a deeper esoteric teaching that transcends simply the fluctuations of different avenues for research and study. So
yeah,
that's one thing that I really look for in people who I study with, the people that I learn from, is the ability to communicate on a level that's deeper than simply sharing information.
Yeah. It's like what charisma is, or like a spark of some sort, something that makes the mystery, like a mystery that they have possession of, that different quality that is really creative. I think it's just like a really high performing creative ability that they like attach to.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's certainly tapping into something, isn't it? Because it's not readily accessible to everyone at every time. I mean, that's the goal, but It's a human.
Yeah. Well, maybe it is, and we're just not aware of it, or some sort of level
Right.
of that.
I mean, that's why I refer to it as the goal, is because like it's possible. It's definitely possible. But I
Yeah.
find for me, I fluctuate in between whether you want to call it empathing or tuning in or just maybe dealing with my own shit throughout the day and like my own ego. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a constant wave in and out of like, oh, feeling really inspired and like back to the human shit, and really inspired and back to the human shit. And it just keeps kind of going on and on.
Right. Yeah.
With the
The
goal being like, yeah, you get the oscillation, like you get that steady, constant, tapped in, tuned in type of feeling.
Mm.
And I think that's the reason that we have art, right? Because it gives you a snapshot of somebody doing that in their craft.
Right.
Where whether you're a Reiki practitioner, you're a singer-songwriter, whether you are a NASCAR driver or I don't know, a construction worker, there's different periods of time where we're just on it. You know what I mean? And it doesn't feel like there's effort there, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, totally. To be in flow.
To be in flow.
It's a great concept.
I can't remember where this came from as a kid, but I really want to get it. It's super fucking funny. Oh yeah, it's some line from a movie or something in there, and this woman says to a man, "Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior?" And he pauses. He goes, "No, but I'm a big fan of his work."
That's fantastic. I've never heard that. You have to send that to me.
I will.
That's really funny. What was it? Just a video?
It's some snippet from a movie or something.
Right. Oh, that's great. I haven't even heard that.
It's hysterical, isn't it? I was listening to Alan Watts yesterday talk about, he was talking about Lao Tzu, and the man who preceded Lao Tzu that is lesser known is Li Tzu. And I believe in conversation in one of the texts or the recounting of his teachings, he was talking to some degree about how the only difference between an enlightened state and human life is that when you're in an enlightened state, it just feels like you're floating off the ground, but nothing is different. It just feels like you're light. Mm-hmm. And he was said to have been able to move with the wind, to fly with the wind, which is such a cool
concept. That's beyond Gone with the Wind, huh?
He wasn't even Gone with the Wind.
That's way Gone with the Wind.
Way gone. Way far gone with the wind.
That's fantastic.
But yeah, I think it's what you're saying.
Right. Well, to be enlightened is to be in light, right?
100%. That's a great way
to light. To be lighter on your feet. To be light.
Yeah, very well.
Beacon of light.
Exactly. One thing that I really like to do with these types of concepts is bring it way down to earth for people who think that we're just like talking out of our ass. But they're not. Actually, I'm talking out of my mouth.
Talking out of our crowns.
So, Adam, how would you communicate to somebody who doesn't believe anything that we believe what enlightenment would be like for them?
Well, I would say they would need to believe what I believe necessarily, or what we believe. I would just say be open to the possibility, and that there's more to know, and more to understand, and more to shed light on than we've been told.
I like that a lot.
By most people, yeah.
So it comes back to the open space again, right? To the
channel. The channel, yeah. That's the process, is the channel. Like keeping the channel clear. I think Cyndi Lauper said that actually. It's just like our job as an artist is just to keep the channel clear. Like to be the space of the art, to be the space of the message, to be the space of the light, really.
Yeah. I think a lot of people struggle with that because there's not very much control in that.
Right. Yeah, there's not.
It's really hard to control that process. So people, wig out at the possible.
Yeah, it's more of a practice of letting go, of not controlling.
Exactly. Yeah. That I
I'm
really
glad we're unraveling this now. It makes so much more sense in my head.
well, totally. I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, none of this is easy, right? It's a challenge to live a life
Hmm.
like this. I would call it consciousness, but for most people, it's just like to live a life of such integrity and honesty that you can like really deal with your shit and have the courage to get better every day.
Yeah, right.
And so we have plenty of
So always
memes for it.
hold yourself higher, hold yourself to higher.
A higher standard, higher principle, virtue, whatever. Yeah, for sure.
Right. But just of you, of the person that you were yesterday. Like I feel like that's this place where you can stay the most sane is because if you start judging other people and you start, you know, comparing yourself to other people, like that's really unhappiness, on a big level. Always feeling like you have to constantly compare yourself to somebody, or always feeling like, because then it will never be enough, like you'll never be enough if you're always constantly comparing.
Constant comparison is really interesting, especially when it comes to worthiness, because like you're saying, not being enough is also the driver of that and the result of that, which is kind of interesting. So it's almost like
wow, that's a insight. Yeah, for sure.
We're addicted to not being enough because it gives us something to do. In my experience, it helps us avoid boredom, because boredom, I think, to most people is the scariest thing in the world, because it's that unknown that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, the unconscious, the idle mind, like the void. Like what's in there? That's the subconscious. It's like all the stuff like most people don't want to deal with,
100%. To me, it seems like it's like spending your whole life on the edge of a cliff and like refusing to look over the edge.
Wow, yeah.
You're on this plateau of turning your back to the edge, the edge of this cliff, because you're too afraid to look at what could possibly be there.
Yeah, right. The vastness of that.
Right. Just the sheer unknown of what could potentially be there and how scary and confusing and awe-inspiring or potentially liberating that can be.
Exactly.
I love what you're saying, man. The judgment for me has been a big thing recently, because at least today I really realized, I was like, for all the ways in which I've judged other people, they never ever ever had anything to do with the source of the judgment. Source of the judgment is always me when it comes to my own projections of my own insecurities and bullshit onto other people. Holding my own higher standard as the standard is a super fucking sticky, tricky, and unfair game to play with other people, right?
Right.
And yet it does seem to recur as a theme for me of just trying to figure out, like, damn, what really is my connection to other people from an authentic and genuine place when I don't have that judgment to drive the way that I interact.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing. Like you said, sticky, tricky, and difficult.
For sure. Now, when you talk about your constant comparison, how does that relate to your music? Like, is there something in the background that's always like, was that melody good enough? Was it unique enough? Did I say the right thing?
Oh, that's just the constant narrative all the time. Like that's just the battle of creating something. There's a resistance. It's resistance. So there's something working against you. For every action, there's an equal opposing reaction. So whenever you're going at something creative, expect to come up against a wall and a block, because they're there for really to serve the peace, to serve the opposing force.
Yeah, right. I like that a lot. So what does the resistance do for you over time?
It makes you stronger. It makes makes you more inclined to take on challenge and take on something that may seem abstract, but is up to you to extract the abstract from.
Like that. I like that a lot. So in your personal practice, when it comes to creating this different way of interacting with music, What are kind of the three big things that you think that you've accomplished thus far that have set you apart, that have made you utterly unique in your practice, your musicianship?
Well, I think my ability to openness and my ability to, take on the next step, and mm, and keep pushing myself like uh, towards releasing more stuff and collaborating with other people. I think right now it's collaborating, like finding the people that I truly, and the sound that I truly feel is closest to me, to who I am and to who I want to become. And that feels like the greatest accomplishment so far, is just having the access to the right musicians that help uplift my voice and that I can contribute to in the best way and create the best sound. So I'm in like right now, I was like in the process of doing that, like working with this band from New Orleans that I really love, and he's collaborating with them, and we're writing songs together, and it's just the beginning of that process, but it's something I've really wanted for a long time. It's been something it's really what I've wanted to do. So I think that's probably my biggest accomplishment, I think. And releasing my EP was another one. Being able to travel and live in so many different cities has been, I think it's an accomplishment, like being able to be self-sustaining, like as an individual, and be able to kind of put forth myself, be forthright in where I want to go and what I want to do, and become like a self-governing person. That's really one of my biggest accomplishments in my mind as well. So yeah, those things.
It's huge. I love it. I love it.
Great question for asking that. I didn't even know. I didn't know what I was going to say.
Good. I don't know what I'm going to say at any time. So, I mean, we're right.
That's great. I think that's the way to live, honestly. Sometimes it works.
I stress the shit out of myself trying to come up with answers sometimes, but hey.
Yeah, right? That's a whole other thing. It's like you can either just go with it and like meet it where it's at, or you can, spend a lot of time thinking about thinking.
My mom called me this thing today that was hysterical that I never heard of. Because I was being a little bit, my experience today was I was just a tiny bit grumpy. I was hungry. And so I was being a little bit impatient with training her, right? And I was like, I've been hard on you. Like, you can roast me as much as you want. And she was like, well, I don't know. I don't really know. And I was like, no, really just roast me, Mom. And she called me a dilettante, which is a person who cultivates an area of interest, such as the arts, without real commitment or knowledge.
Right, the dilettante.
That's
a tarot card, actually.
For me, it's like, it's 100%, as much as I tried really hard to have answers and embody most of what I preach, not all, mm-hmm. The fact of the matter is, it's like, yeah, to be perfectly honest, like, I think 95% of the time I'm bullshitting, but I don't think I'm unique in that either. I think everyone on this planet goes through many, many stages of getting more and more honest over time. But for the most part, we don't even know if what we're saying is true because we haven't spent enough time like really thinking it through. And if we thought all the way through all of our thoughts before we said something, it'd be an eternal meditation. So
yeah, wow. Very insightful. Yeah. I think Alan Watts said that, right? Like that about thinking because you can't possibly think of every scenario. You would go mad, thinking of totally. All the like trying to consider all the variables, all the possibilities, and try and fit everything into a box or a certain way, when it's not meant to go that way. It's
absolutely
the opposite, really.
Absolutely. I was just reading something really interesting in this book called Blink that's very much about this, where it says that there can be damage to some part of like the prefrontal cortex or some portion of the brain that's involved in negating certain amounts of information.
Hmm.
So the reflection that they gave, the example that they gave, I believe it was in an autistic patient, a very high functioning autistic patient, or perhaps somebody just with this type of brain damage. But they were trying to schedule the next appointment with that patient. And
Hmm.
the patient spent 30 minutes considering every scenario that could possibly influence the date and time of the meeting that they were going to set, that they were going to set.
Right. Right.
The weather, the day, the traffic, the winds, like
Right.
all these different things that most of us would just ignore.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of like the super conscious, right? Like we have to have a limited consciousness and ego to even be able to manage this insane amount of information that we get bombarded with every day.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's like superposition or something, right? Like, isn't that a quantum term of like superposition, where like,
Yeah,
if everything is a wave and a particle, then whenever you make a decision, you create a moment. You create a powerful, like you attract you attract what it is that you put forth. So like
yeah.
whatever that frequency is, I guess, like, so if you're thinking of whatever you decide, that's what's gonna be the outcome
Hmm.
ultimately.
What would you? Here's where this conversation gets really interesting for me. How would you deliver that to somebody who's been traumatized?
Whoa. I don't know, actually. That's a good question.
Because
I
I
would have to
agree with
I would
you.
have to think about that. I'm not sure.
In my mind, it's like I agree with the statement, but then there should be like an asterisk next to every like spiritual statement, which says like this doesn't apply to trauma. You know?
Yeah.
Because we don't choose that shit. I mean, maybe we
Right.
do at some level, but it's not like, oh man, my vibration was so low today. That's the reason I got hit by a car. Like,
Yeah.
no.
No, I don't. I think that it's more complicated than that, for sure.
Sure, sure. But in
Definitely.
your experience, when you like, let's say we're talking open space being a clear channel, um, what are some intentions you put forth to really help tune into that before you go into that creative process?
Um, taking a deep breath, making sure I'm connected with my breath, and um, doing whatever I have to do. Sometimes I'll burn stuff. I like to burn stuff. I'm a fire sign. So, I'll burn like some sage or like incense, put that on, make sure I have a clear, to just clear out the old stuff. Sometimes I have to write stuff down and be like, um, this is something that's been kind of just eating at me and I need to get it out. And then, that helps too.
For sure. Uh, Getting super clear, basically, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Getting very clear. Yeah, I'm learning more of that lately too. Like having to clear out old stuff in order to bring forth new stuff, and you have to do that layer by layer, and like plane by plane.
Plane by plane. I love that.
Yeah.
You mentioned when something is eating at you, you have to get it out. That's a really interesting statement to me. Does that present itself in your art quite a bit?
Yeah, it does. Definitely. Just like like in Feeling Lonely, that song, it's about it has a lot of layers to it. It's about, the feedback loop of social media and the feeling isolated and lonely in such a connected technological society that we have. Like that's something that eats at me all the time. So I have to like so it's like part of me externalizing that in a way.
So it sounds like you're saying being able to externalize the fact that when you're in that social media realm, it can feel very isolating.
Yeah, it can be like a loop of that kind of captures you and kind of takes you into a different form of disconnection.
Hmm.
Yeah, in a way.
Yeah. Talk about comparison. That seems to be the name of the game when it comes to social media as well, right? So that's one way
Yeah,
to isolate ourselves. I made
you
a
can't
post.
help that, right? Like if you're
Say that
on
again.
a site, you can't really help but to compare. When you're on a social media site.
Exactly. I think Gary Vee said it really well. He said, like, don't judge yourself in comparison to the people who only post when they're crushing it. And because
Right.
it's true. Like, why would we? I try to
I
do
like
this
that.
often, like make light of myself, but I especially find as somebody who's in the health and wellness world, like in terms of fitness, like if you don't have a big ass or you're completely yoked, then like why even post your workout? And that's
Yeah.
yet we take our inner inability to like connect with ourselves as we are. We take that onto social media, and
Right.
we only share what we would be proud of, probably only to criticize ourselves anyway. uh,
Yeah.
but
Well,
to me, your musicianship is authentic, and I think the the voice that you have is really intriguing to me because it draws you in, unlike most people who can just hit a pitch. Like it has it's almost like, I want to compare it to almost like a really well aged whiskey. You know what I mean?
hell yeah. Thanks, man.
Yeah, it has like
That's
a
it. That's
character.
like that's one of the best compliments I've ever gotten.
Yeah, dude, because it has character. You watch American Idol, it's like, oh, you hit it, you can sing well and you hit a pitch. That's great, but like most of the people sound the same.
Yeah.
Um, and so you have a unique, authentic, I think, approach to your music, and the way that you share on social media, and just in our personal friendship as well. Like it's a realness and a charisma and integrity that I really appreciate.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that. Yeah, I feel the same about you.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Anyway,
I'm
in
not
many
a
forms,
so
on all planes, my friend.
on the whole plane. By the way, the plane over to fucking Oz was a little bit batshit.
How was it? I want to talk about it later.
A little bit batshit. We'll talk about it
Little
after.
rat shit.
A little bit batshit.
Well, we'll talk about it over some tea.
Tea. Yeah, tea and
Tea.
crumpets.
Tea and crumpets.
Tea.
That podcast will come later.
That podcast will come later, sure.
It'll be like an extension of this one. Maybe.
Yeah, it'll be our
like sister network.
and our AMA. Ask me anything.
Ask us anything, and we'll talk about it in whatever voice you want to hear.
Hell yeah. So the world is in peril, my friend. What are we gonna do about it?
Yeah. Wow. What a question to ask someone. Wow. I think the only solution is putting on your own oxygen mask before you help somebody else put on their own oxygen mask. Take a deep breath before you help somebody else take a deep breath. Get your room together before telling other people to do it, and be the change. Be the change. That's the only solution I see. And music for sure. Definitely a lot of music. Well, a revolution of music and art. I hope can like soften the suffering that the planet is in collectively, that our race is in, all races are in, and connect with that thing that connects all of us, hopefully.
That's beautiful.
Which is music. For me, it was music. It's the thing that connects us on a deep level and moves us. It moves us.
I really, really like what you said about putting your own oxygen mask on first. Ultimately, I mean, there is no better truth, right? And that's something that I've been really contemplating too, and something I got a little bit of shit on for I got shit on social media for this, which was basically a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, which is, you know, doing your own work before you try to affect change. But also with the kind of caveat to not hesitate until you feel like you're whole and complete and everything is perfect to try to go make some change happen.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a balance in there, I think, from that, like, from what's again, I guess that's resistance too, like there's this resistance that says, what difference can I make? Like, what is that really going to change anything? Are you really going to affect other people? And that's the resistance of creation, I guess, of creating something, or creating change,
Mm-hmm.
and having an effect, or a foreseeable effect, I guess. Like, our mind needs to see like results immediately, and needs to see like how it really, what's the analytical, like, scientific research that tells me that I'm affecting somebody else right now, like that kind of mind game player.
Totally. Totally.
It's just a form of resistance.
I really like what you're saying there about that materialistic point of view. It's almost childish in a way, right?
It's very childish. Yes, absolutely.
Until I have proof that
Until I have scientific data, all the freaking statistics written out in front of me, like, blah, blah, blah. We're not connected until I say all of it.
But you don't have to look further than our personal human relationship to figure out like these things exist,
No, yeah, we're floating through the ether right now, like on a wave form. We're on a bandwidth of ether and talking to each other through this wormhole. Like, that's pretty. It's scientific, but it's also out there.
Oh yeah, it's not for the faint of
heart. Like 50 years ago, that's out there. Like, somebody were talking about that.
Isn't it funny, like, if you think about the bell curve of history, where it's like, yeah, 50 years ago that was whack, 200 years ago super whack, but you go back 6,000 years, that's totally cool. Like
exactly, like pyramids, electronic, like wireless electricity, like super technology, like it's cool then.
Send a modern doctor back to fucking Giza, and then you're like, what is this asshole?
Right? No joke.
Yeah, I totally love it. Yeah, it's yeah. I like what you're saying about just like go out and do your own work before you try to make, especially when it comes to like cleaning. I think you said cleaning up your own room before you tell other people to clean up theirs. Like,
yeah.
It's something I've.
If you don't got a rocking room, then you don't have any right to tell anybody else that they don't have a rocking room, or way of being with that. That really it's just a way of being.
Ultimately, it's our self-judgment too, right? It's just like us saying, like, I feel like shit about the fact my room's a mess, so I'm going to tell you your room's a mess and make you feel the way I feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
If we don't already feel each other's shit.
So that you can feel bad for what I should be feeling bad about.
So true. Yeah, man. So,
back to the science thing though, like I think anything mystical, all the mystic arts and like the mythical technologies that are embedded in our myth, it's like that our modern technology is really just trying to catch up to that stuff, and it's really just old technology. It's technology that we're like rediscovering, I think.
100%. 100%. There is a lot of what we're going towards that we've done before, but that we don't know as a species. That seems to be pretty resonant for me.
Yeah.
Hopefully this time we do it around in a more sustainable way. And if people are wondering what we're talking about Atlantis and Lemuria.
Absolutely.
Which, if you want to get into the science types, there's evidence for it. Y'all are just looking.
I believe so too. Yeah.
Absolutely. But yeah, what you're saying about music too, for me resonates, where it's like, just continuing to create cultural revolution through music has been the age-old song, right? From, especially talking about Black Lives Matter, from Aretha Franklin to Nina Simone, Billie Holiday, Louis Armstrong, musicianship that really represents cultural revolution and progress and the embodiment of the healing that we need is needed more than ever. And unfortunately, musicianship in the mass, in the way that we consume it as a mass populace, is generally pretty shallow in its outreach and its disposition. There's some profundity in some popular music, you know?
Right.
But sometimes you have to go a little bit deeper and find some more off the grid people who are really tapped into something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you have an EP coming out soon, right?
Yeah, I just started working on it. I'm working on it with Leo from Miss Mojo. He's a bassist in a New Orleans band called Miss Mojo. And if you haven't, to listeners, if you haven't heard of Miss Mojo, go listen to Miss Mojo. They've got Mojo for sure. And so I'm really stoked to be working on a new EP with them. I've with Leo. He got a few songs that he's written, and I've been co-writing on one of them. I just did a demo of one of them, and next month I'll be doing some recording in New Orleans with them.
Fantastic.
So I'm excited. So that's my current project musically, and it's the sound that I want. It's like funky, soulful, jazzy, jammy, all of it, and it'll be fun to see the evolution of that sound.
For sure, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how did you connect with them to begin with?
He's a guy I met at the Austin Music Foundation.
Oh, nice.
I did a workshop with them, and I was wearing a Led Zeppelin t-shirt, and he was right next to me, and I was like, "Yo, let's be friends." And we started jamming together, and then kind of went from there.
Fantastic, dude. I love that. Well, that's one thing I think you do really well is network and create new opportunities with musicians that you really want to work with. And like you said, those that uplift your voice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The complementary work.
Now, are we kind of focusing on still rhythm and blues, soul in this new EP?
Yeah, this direction is more it's more funk, jazz. It's got some New Orleans soul in there, definitely. You can hear it from the way that he writes. And our connection was really that I lived in New Orleans a few years ago, and that was our connection. He had moved to Austin from New Orleans, and we actually have some mutual friends also, I think, from New Orleans, like some coincidence. So yeah.
Fantastic.
Happy bad. It's good stuff. I'll have to show you some more of it. I know I showed you one song.
Please. It was funky, dude. I like that. I like it a lot.
Thanks, brother. Thank you.
For sure.
Yeah.
This is really exciting. So as we create this cultural shift in music and this revolution when it comes to social justice and our ability to show up for other people, what is kind of a parting message that you could give the audience that really ground them into their own purpose and their own ability to affect change?
Take a deep breath before you do anything and connect with what will connect you to everyone. And that is the heart space, that is the space of creativity, the space of the divine, whatever you want to call it. That's what I would say.
It does come back to the breath for sure. The ability to connect and take a deep motherfucking breath.
Take a deep breath. The sound and the breath. It's all about the sound and the breath.
Sound and the breath, right? One of my teachers said it really well. He said, before there was the word, there was the breath.
Yes, definitely. The right? The is the sound and the breath, the thing that holds everything together. The ether, the air.
Absolutely. I mean, of course, this doesn't exist, but I'd love to hear like the hypothetical conversation between like angels and like the Godhead Well, what do you think like the universal sound should be? The background, the one angel who's like kind of aloof.
What about this? It was a nice reenactment. That was great. I remember that from my old days in Atlantis. The old plays of the days of old.
The days of old. Take me back to Atlantis.
I would love to go. I actually did this. I did some of this Egyptian mystery school online by Billy Carson. Have you ever heard of him before?
Yeah,
he has this. Sure. Yeah, he has this thing, Forbidden Knowledge, and he talks about like the ancient pyramids and stuff. And yeah, he has some really, really cool insights about the pyramids and Atlantis, and yeah, there's some gems in there of old wisdom and knowledge.
That Billy Carson, man.
Emerald tablets. I'm reading the Emerald tablets right now again.
By is it so? It's Thoth, but has it been transcribed? Or who has it been transcribed?
Yeah, Thoth, the original Thoth. He like wrote the original tablets, and they were actually on this meta material that is completely indestructible, and it's like emerald, and I think only a couple of people have translated it, but this version is actually by it's like a version by Spirit Science. Have you heard of that channel before? Spirit Science. Yeah, he's like kind of made a, what's the word, not a denomination, but what's like the thing in religions, the denomination, or like a version, just a version, I guess, and they have NKJ, things like that. So it's like his version of the Emerald tablets, but yeah, still same wisdom, same principles. It's really insightful. It's cool.
Damn. For people who don't know, what do the Emerald tablets preach?
Frequency, vibration, all is matter, mind over matter, concepts like that. Ancient Egyptian ideologies.
I like the Emerald tablets a lot. They're from the little bits that I've read. There's a lot of truth in there. A lot, and it gets complex too.
What's that?
It gets complex as well.
Yeah, it is very complex. It's like a riddle almost. As you read it, it's like poetry. It's almost Shakespearean. It's like a riddle.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of hidden meaning in our language, for sure.
Right.
In any language.
Mm-hmm.
And then
it's all a code, definitely.
It's a code, for sure. Absolutely. Well, to the code, my friend. Thank you.
To the code. Code closed.
Code closed. Where can people find you on social media outlets, and where can people tap into your content?
Oh, tap in on Spotify, Adam James. Tap in on Instagram at Adam James Vibe, and I'm gonna continue to throw good vibes at you. Working on my new EP. I'll be posting about that pretty soon. I'm gonna be recording next month, so expect some more content coming.
Oh yeah, Adam's music is fantastic. I highly recommend it. I appreciate his sharing on Instagram, and he's a unique, authentic, and earnest guy. So go check him out if you can. Not if you can, you can, and you should do it right now.
No, you can do it.
You can do it.
You can do it now.
You can do it, Stuart.
You're going nowhere. Randy Savage. We're going savage. Yeah, thank you for that. That's great.
Absolutely, dude. It was a total pleasure. We'll hop on soon again, and in the meantime, go check them out. Organic Health Movement. That's me. It's been a pleasure hosting my brother here, and we'll be at it again soon.
Zavi D.
I'm Jay.